I'm a youth community awareness volunteer who work in food markets within Bulawayo, ensuring that the vendors within the food markets adhere to COVID-19 precautions and regulations that have been put.
What we do on a day-to-day basis is we go to the office first and then report for duty, and then we go to the field work.
Our work pretty much involves educating people on COVID-19, its symptoms, how to prevent it, and also how to use the marketplace, institutional hygiene.
We capacitate them on COVID-19, we raise awareness, we educate them on what they are supposed to do, having their masks on and also sanitizing their hands and also sanitizing their customers as well. We also educate them on physical distancing.
That we're doing is so important because most people were misinformed and most people were actually vulnerable to the disease without knowing it, and it helps bring positive change into the community and raise awareness and social responsibilities.
We have noted behavior change within the vendors. They are now able to put on their masks. They are now able to adhere to all the COVID-19 restrictions. It's now convenient for them to proceed with their day-to-day activities.
Some of these vendors have come up with health committees which are responsible for making sure that their vending site is clean. And also, these vendors are now making sure that their customers are educated on COVID-19.
Thank you, Juliana. Quite fascinating. It has been said over and over again that whenever there is a disaster, the first responders are volunteers. Volunteers are the foot soldiers of development. They are the foot soldiers of recovery. They are foot soldiers when nobody else is there. It's a volunteer, somebody who comes in to fill the gap. Without much ado, somebody has reminded me that I've just come without identity. Who am I? All right. My name is Tapiwa Kamuruko. I'm a police specialist, and currently I'm sitting here at UNV headquarters in Bonn, in Germany, but ordinarily I sit in Nairobi. Without much ado, let me invite the regional manager for UNV Regional Office for East and Southern Africa, Lucy Ndungu, to make a remarks. And thereafter, I also request Lucy to introduce our chief guest this morning, the Minister of Youth, Sports, Arts and Recreation from the Republic of Zimbabwe, to make a remarks. Over to you, Lucy.
Thank you very much, Tapiwa. Good morning, colleagues. Honorable Minister of Youth, Sports, Arts and Recreation, Republic of Zimbabwe, Honorable Kirsty Coventry, government representatives from the Republic of Kenya, the Republic of Madagascar, Republic of Malawi, colleagues from the UN system, colleagues from the volunteer constituency, Deputy Vice Chancellor, Mount Kenya University, esteemed development partners, ladies and gentlemen, volunteers, good morning. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you to this event, one in a series of dialogue, to deliberate about volunteering in general and to specifically deliberate on the place of volunteering in development priorities set out in the global goals in the African Union Agenda 2063. Karibuni, bienvenue, Tindambire Mauya. Honorable Minister, ladies and gentlemen, today's discussion doesn't center on an entirely new concept. It is a widely practiced and embraced within East and Southern Africa region. In Zimbabwe, Zunde Rambo is a deep-seated tradition of community volunteering that has bound the society together in difficult times, such as famine, In Rwanda, the practice of umuganda has been used to extend charity to the needy. In Tanzania and in Kenya, ujamaa and harambee, respectively, are the cornerstones of a traditional form of mobilizing social capital. In South Africa, the practice of Ubuntu was the clarion call to participate in the struggle for independence and for different people to render support to the African National Congress, including its armed wing, the Umkhonto weSizwe. These few examples illustrate a proper and well-deliberated voluntary action which is deployed to create an effective local solution and become the transformational power needed to transform societies. In the past, there has been very limited investment in documenting such voluntary action and analyzing the benefits for integration into the policy priorities, particularly in Africa. The evidence of these actions has remained unquantified, and their contribution has largely been anecdotal. So how do we see volunteering evolving? Across the globe, of course, we are seeing the sustained efforts, and during this period of the COVID-19 pandemic, we have seen that efforts are now being made on leveraging volunteerism to deliver the 2030 agenda. Member states of the UN in the quadrennial comprehensive policy review at the 75th session of the General Assembly encouraged the United Nations Development System to, in partnership with civil society, the private sector, and other stakeholders, to support such efforts and promote the conducive environment that volunteerism needs and the support that volunteers contribute to enhance the sustainability of development results. UNV is coordinating stakeholders to develop and showcase different volunteering approaches. Today's dialogue fits into this trajectory that we are on. Increasingly, we see more data is becoming available on volunteering. There is emerging evidence that is suggesting that volunteering practices are changing in response to wider social patterns and challenges. We have seen that, of course, during this pandemic, in response to climatic variations. We have seen the technological advancements, migrations, the changing nature of work that Tapiwa mentioned, humanitarian crisis, and the existing inequalities which the pandemic has exacerbated. Research also shows an increase in episodic volunteering, where volunteers tend to engage with specific short-term courses, an outcome they personally identify with, instead of showing long-term loyalty to specific organizations. These trends are described as the new forms of volunteering that are often pitted against the traditional, if you may, that are characterized by lifelong commitments. In East and Southern Africa region, governments are increasingly doing a lot to integrate volunteering and volunteerism into their national development priorities. 9 countries, Zimbabwe, Kenya, Malawi are part of them, are developing or have already developed volunteer policies and strategies with the support of UNV. Additionally, we see more member states, such as Madagascar, which is present here today, recognizing the value of volunteers and volunteerism in their voluntary national reviews of the Sustainable Development Goals. Representatives from these governments will share with us their reflections and their experience integrating volunteerism and working with volunteers to, of course, accelerate national development priorities. So why this forum today? And as I conclude, I want to just recognize that we have a very, very dynamic panel today, which is going to discuss some of these issues that I have just highlighted here. They will help us kind of have a discussion and answer such questions as, how does innovative volunteerism look? How is volunteering evolving from acts of charity to a powerful contribution to the development aspirations of countries globally and in our region? What should we do to embrace this trend that we're seeing? I welcome you all and wish you a very, very engaging discussion. Finally, let me take this opportunity to invite the Honorable Minister of Youth, Sports, Arts and Recreation from the Republic of Zimbabwe to give the keynote address. Honorable Minister, welcome very much. Thank you for gracing us with your presence. Over.
Thank you and good morning to everybody. I hope that you're all having a wonderful day. To our Director of Ceremonies and the UN family, thank you for this platform. To all of the participants and guests, welcome. I'm really looking forward to today's work that we'll be sharing and ideas. So volunteering, getting ready for this talk today, I decided to just Google volunteering, volunteerism, best ideas behind volunteerism, why to volunteer. And there were different things that stuck out to me. And one of the strongest messages I think that stuck out is that no work is too small. That messaging really came across from just looking at different high-profile volunteers, people that go out and have made this into their daily jobs and what they do and what they care about. And the messaging was that no work is too small, and that volunteers are extremely valuable resources to communities and to countries. And that volunteering builds communities, it boosts well-being, it increases responsibility, it helps to build one's self-esteem as well as others around them. It creates positive change. It allows for people to gain experience. It allows for people to find a purpose. It makes a difference. It allows for us to feel involved. It helps us to upskill ourselves. It connects and it contributes and it starts a conversation. So this is what we are doing here today. We are connecting, we're figuring out how we can all contribute, and we are learning about how we can start to widen this conversation around volunteering. How can volunteering help us as an individual, a community, a country, a region, and a continent to reach our full potential? And it's really a great pleasure to be with you here today. And I'd like to thank the UN team and family for this Regional V-Connect dialogue series, and really looking forward to it in the future on being able to keep us connected and to continue this conversation and to help us continuing to contribute to our countries and our country's well-being and reaching our full potential. So what are the objectives? Obviously, the objectives are to be able to enable us to reflect on the role that volunteerism places in communities, how it can build skills for young people, how it can help us to overcome difficulties, how it can help us to overcome difficult conversations that are needed to be had within countries or communities. And I'm also hopeful that this space will enable us to reconsider how volunteerism can be better integrated into a more formal development of programs that will be able to contribute to the attainment of the sustainability development goals. Volunteerism is a practice that has perpetually been embedded into African culture, and it is reinforced by the Ubuntu philosophy, which emphasizes the idea that I am because we are. It is, however, changing, and it's changing rapidly due to social, economical, and technological change. Technology has become a method that we're all using today. And maybe COVID, especially COVID, has pushed us to do that even more. So how do we stay connected? How do we stay contributing? And how do we stay figuring out new innovative ways to continue our voluntary work with being more technology driven, by coming to becoming a more prominent place and being more way traditional full gatherings we do. How do we continue this conversation dialogue today and ensure that we'll be able to help each other to overcome. It's important to note that volunteers have played a significant role in complementing government's efforts in the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. Many young people around Zimbabwe, as I'm sure around the region, have been coming up with innovative solutions, such as face masks, sanitizers, but not just that, they've gone out of their way to help come up with really cool, innovative communication strategies to get people in communities listening, to help communities better understand COVID. We as a country have seen how volunteerism has helped us over the last few years. We had the cholera outbreak in 2018. We had the impact of Cyclone Idai in 2019, and now the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 and 2021. And our volunteers in our communities were not only helping government, but in most of these cases, they were our first responders. They were the people that we relied on to help communities in some of their darkest hours, because we could just physically not get to them. And this is the importance of volunteering. It's selfless. It's about a bigger impact. It's about a bigger goal than oneself. It's about seeing something within oneself, within one's community and within one country that they want to drive, that they want to help to ensure a better future for those around them. We know, and we've seen as governments, as individuals, that within the continent, investing in youth is a huge key strategy. And investing in youth volunteering in terms of helping young people to help engage communities in order to be able to build nations and civic participation is really at the forefront of what we need to be doing. We have seen that our youth population is growing faster and faster, but our employment rates are not moving as quickly as our youth is growing. So how do we work together? How do we promote youth volunteerism? How do we allow for there to be space for young people to take advantage of volunteering, to be able to upskill themselves so that they can get employed, so that they can create their own jobs, so that they can create their own future? These are the questions that I believe national and regional and continental volunteering can help with. The evidence that we see from a community of young people, where young people have been fully engaged and have gone out of their way to help their community, that community has prospered. That community has become more resilient. It's become more responsible. It's allowed for those communities to come together and work together for a brighter future. And where did that start? That started by a few young volunteers being selfless, driving the idea of we are, or I am because we are, at the forefront of their messaging. They took a step forward towards being able to enable themselves and others in that volunteerism space. It also provides hope. It provides a central avenue for all Zimbabweans, all citizens, to contribute to become a better nation. We can't do this alone, and we have to continue to build key partnerships, not just with our youth, but also—
Sorry, I couldn't hear what you said.
Sorry, not sure what that was. But also one of my phones or something's talking to me. But we also need to be able to build on our relationships with our stakeholders, with our UN family, and not just with the UN family, but with our private sector. We have to be able to create better platforms as governments, as communities, to bring this full circle. How do we create and how do we allow for volunteering to bring communities together but not just bring communities together, to have a second step from that. What is that second step? What is that next platform? How do we bring other stakeholders to the table to make what is volunteering into a job, into becoming self-sustainable as a community? The only way that I see that we can do that is by bringing partners on board from the private sector and from our UN families and other donor sectors. If we can bring these sectors all together with these communities, with these young, with our youth leading these initiatives, I do think that we'll not only see huge strides in building better and stronger nations, but we'll see more accountability, because that, at the end of the day, is also what we're trying to strive for. We want communities to be accountable to each other, to be accountable for one goal. But we can't create that accountability if we're not giving young people the space to be able to have a plan, to be able to have an idea of what comes next. So while we are providing the space for volunteerism, and we're doing that in many different ways, we as a government are bringing in our National Youth Service, which is voluntary, which will allow for young people to be upskilled, which will allow for them to be able to learn and be able to teach others what volunteering means. It will allow for there to be psychological well-being. In addition, for there to be a way in which young people can share ideas of how they see the future. I see it every single day with young people, the initiatives, the resilience that they have had, especially over these last, really coming into the 2 years of the COVID pandemic, how they've adapted very quickly onto digital platforms, onto being able to use technology. Now we as government and we as those mentors around them and stakeholders have to figure out how do we then come up with programs to make that a sustainable avenue for them to make a living. You know, at the end of the day, as much as we see the value in bringing our communities closer together through volunteerism, we're also wanting to ensure that through these volunteerism programs that we create a sustainable platform, that we create an avenue for people to find new ways of income. And really that has been what I've seen over the past few years with young people, whether it's been from volunteering within their community on cleanup campaigns. Suddenly they've found an idea of how to turn trash, how to turn things that they found in those cleanup campaigns into a business, how they've realized that within their communities, they can solve so many different challenges or problems by coming together, volunteering, and seeing an opportunity, not seeing a challenge. And this is, again, a huge space that I don't think that we have taken as much advantage of as I think we could. I think the potential that volunteerism has to find new ways of engaging, to find new ways of creating sustainability, to find new ways of allowing for young people to come up with their own local solutions to solve challenges and problems, is, I think, for us as a ministry, something that we've been focusing on. And it's something that not only through this program and through our national volunteerism strategy that we have in place, but through different connections like the Youth Connect. That was one way in which we saw young people who started out volunteerism suddenly came up into this business idea and now are employing other young people. That is the power. That is the power of volunteerism and moving and driving a nation forward and a continent forward. And I'm really looking forward to being able to see how other countries have seen this happen locally, how they are creating better platforms for young people to take those next steps, and figuring out better ways to bring all of these different stakeholders together under one platform. So while we can encourage all of you to continue being champions in volunteerism in your different various spaces, I'm also really wishing all of you the best of luck in the engagements that we'll have throughout these series, to come up with new ways of staying connected, to find new ways of contributing, and to find new ways of keeping this conversation very strong throughout our countries and continent and region. And I just, again, would like to thank you all for this opportunity. It's been a wonderful opportunity for us as a country to work so closely with our UN family and our UN volunteers, and we've had huge success, as I know many of you have in our other countries, sister countries around us. And I'm really looking forward to this platform to see how we can continue these different engagements. So thank you all very much for the platform and for the time to share with you today some of our thoughts and some of the objectives that we as a ministry are going to be following through under our volunteerism program. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Kirsty Coventry. Lucy, I've been informed here that the minister will not be with us throughout this session. She has other pressing business. I'll ask you to already thank her on our behalf. But before you do that, Honorable Minister, you allow me to tell people who you are more than just being a politician. I'm from Zimbabwe. For many years, close to 3 decades, Honorable Kirsty Coventry was very much a role model in Zimbabwe and in the region. She's an Olympian. She is a world recorder, a world record holder, and most decorated Olympian in Africa. I think this is something that people didn't know. And as I said, a role model for most youth, especially in swimming. So, Honorable Minister, we are quite privileged, honored to have you this morning. And those accolades, those medals you have, they are an inspiration. As you know, UNV, we are an inspiration in action. They will inspire us and they will inspire the youth that we are talking about. Lucy, please, can you propose some vote of thanks to the minister, and also to that in her absence, the director in the ministry will be with us throughout. So thank you again, Minister, on my behalf. Lucy, over to you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, and for gracing us this morning and for the very comprehensive remarks, giving us the experience of how volunteerism and voluntary action is actually being manifested in Zimbabwe, and the different kind of challenges that this has supported in responding to. We are very grateful to have the partnership that we have with the government of Zimbabwe, and we look forward to continuing that partnership in the area of volunteerism in support of your development priorities. And Tapiwa has given that other face of the Honorable Minister for those probably who are not very familiar with her past achievements. So we really, really also thank you from that front of embracing you, one, as a government representative, and two, also putting a human face and a past life to what you are today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Lucy. Thank you again, Minister. Dear colleagues, Honorable Minister, and dear our manager, senior management from UNDP, we are moving into the thick of things slowly. First, let me introduce the panel, but before that, allow me to introduce the UNDP resident representative, Mr. Walid Badari. I don't think I can introduce him well, but For those who have not worked with him, who don't know him, let me say that Walid is a very easygoing man. He has changed the way of doing work since he arrived in Kenya almost 2 years now. And he has taken the work of UNDP in particular and the UN system and the other funds and programs that are coordinated through UNDP to another level. He has encouraged us to be innovative. He has encouraged us to expand our imagination and even to take risks. How does a manager say, go and take a risk? But Warid says, go and take a risk, and out of risk, you learn. And we have done that. He has asked and encouraged us to reimagine how to do work. I'll not be lying to you if I tell you here that in Kenya, we call him our pilot. He is leading us somewhere. Especially in this current pandemic, Warid has provided certain type of leadership that is outstanding by no means. And we are very grateful as Kenya to have him as our RR. And I want to leave it at that, but Warid has been outstanding in leading us as UNDP, particularly at these very difficult moments. I'll give him time to say something. I just want to introduce all the panel members, then I'll get back to Warid to say something. On the panel of 6 this morning, we are going to unpack volunteering in different contexts as they see them, as they see it through their experiences, as they see it from their practices. We have 6 panel members. I'll start with Ms. Mara Elion, who is currently the Director of the Promotion of Volunteering and Community Animation in the Ministry of Communication and Culture in Madagascar. She has held many positions in that country in the area of communication and regional land management. And she comes in with a lot of experience, more than 16 years in teaching in academia and project management. She has numerous qualifications in administration, leadership, entrepreneurship, social science, and law. Ladies and gentlemen, please, on my behalf, welcome Melanie. Mara, Miss Mara. Allow me.
Good morning, everyone.
Sorry. Is she here?
Yes. Thank you for giving me the floor.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone.
I'm only going to introduce all of you, and then I'll give you the floor to speak. Let me introduce Mr. Elias Murinda, the Director of Youth Development and Empowerment in the Ministry of Youth Development, Arts and Recreation, the Republic of Zimbabwe. I've worked with Mr. Murinda in the past 2 years in the formulation and development of the National Volunteer Strategy in Zimbabwe, which was handed over to the country, to the government in May this year. And we are hoping that the government or the cabinet will discuss, will debate this and hopefully adopt it before the end of the year. It's been an energy, has provided his insights, he has provided leadership and direction in the work towards developing this strategy. You are most welcome, Mr. Murinda. Allow me to introduce an old friend of mine. I don't know who is tracking who. Whenever I'm on a platform, Richard is always there. And let me introduce Richard Munangu, Dr. Richard Munangu. He is currently the Africa Regional Climate Change Coordinator at the United Nations Environment Program, UNEP, in Nairobi. He is responsible for guiding the implementation of UNEP's climate resilient development strategy at national and regional level. Dr. Munangu, his experience encompasses a unique blend in programming and policy on regional and global issues related to climate change policy, environmental management, sustainable development, clean energy, resource efficiency, and food security. If I go throughout his bio, it will be probably the whole day. So I want to leave it at this, but to say that Dr. Mnag is the author of a very interesting book, Making Africa Work Through the Power of Innovative Volunteerism. Allow me to welcome Richard, and your time will come for your statement. Let me also introduce Melan Anushko Poran Sopren. She is the manager. She's currently is the leader, the team leader for exploration, head of exploration of the Accelerator Lab in Mauritius and Seychelles, UNDP Mauritius and Seychelles since November 2020. But previously she had worked as a manager on community programs in Mauritius. Melanie is a chemical engineer by training and also has a master's degree in business administration. And she has volunteered in various NGOs, especially in the field of poverty alleviation, youth and women empowerment, community development, and environment, among others. Colleagues, allow me to welcome Melanie. I also would like to introduce Dr. Peter Kirira. Dr. Peter Kirira is at the University of Mount Kenya in Kenya itself, where he is a senior lecturer and is the principal at the College of Graduate Studies. Prior to his appointment, he served as the founding director of the University Foundation for a period of 3 years. What is most interesting is that he is the founder of a student civic engagement program at the university that won the award on innovative civic engagement in 2020. He has published a lot, over 30 peer-reviewed papers and holds 3 patents. I would like to encourage him to have 1 patent in volunteerism. And in his free time, he says that he loves to tour the country and to mentor young people, the youth. Dr. Peter Kirira, you are most welcome. The last but not least, let me invite somebody that we have always worked with, especially in the context of IVD and other many convenings that we do at UNV, Madame Doreen Ninana Hage. She is the director at UN in East Africa and has extensive professional experience in communication, advocacy, and project management and implementation. Before joining ONE, which is an acronym, she has worked with the International Conference on the Great Lakes region, an intergovernmental organization of 12 African countries whose mission is to promote sustainable peace and security in the Great Lakes region. She has also worked as a communications officer and research coordinator for the national television in Burundi. Doreen, welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, these are the eminent people, dynamic panel that is going to unpack the topic of today, the future of volunteering in East and Southern Africa, the first in a series that the UNV Regional Office for East and Southern Africa have lined up. And we are happy and comfortable that this group, this team, this panel will lead us. Let me go back to Warid and ask him to give us his words of wisdom. Warid, sir.
Thank you so much, Tapiwa, for the expert moderation and that very, very warm and kind welcome. Lucy, also to you, and thank you for inviting me to be part of this great discussion. And I want to thank the Honorable Minister in absentia now for really setting the tone and the context for a discussion. And it's very difficult to follow after such incisive remarks, but I think she's really laid it all there for us to chew on. And let me maybe take on that inspiring Olympic theme to start us off, having heard about the illustrious background of the minister, but hello from Kenya, who, as you all know, on the heels of the recently concluded Tokyo Olympics, was the highest ranking African country to achieve Olympic glory, and proud to be communicating to you from the homeland, where we continue to see so many other Africans, the likes of Eliud Kipchoge, also inspiring us all to do great things. But let me also say that for us as UNDP Kenya, it's an honor to have been invited and to be part of this conversation. And I think what we can do is reflect some of our own experiences in a very unique country context. For us also as UNDP, as was mentioned earlier by Tapiwa, I have a privilege of serving in a country where UNDP actually has quite a large family of representation. We have a global center, we have a regional hub, we have the country office, and of course we have the regional UNV office for Isaro, Eastern and Southern Africa, but also the Kenya UNV country office for Kenya. And so it's quite a spectrum sitting within, of course, and we have Richard from UNEP and Habitat, where their global headquarters are also based in Kenya. And so Kenya is really quite a formidable venue and host for the UN. So let me also put that as a context for us, because it does link with what Tapiwa was saying earlier about how it was for us important to ensure that all hands are on deck from this wide UNDP and the UN family to deliver meaningful results for the country at a very challenging time. And we've heard, of course, from the minister about the needs for the SDGs now, certainly compounded with COVID-19. Tapiwa, you had predicted 100 or so, a third of the invitees. You're at 243. And I don't know whether that's a testament to the topic, partly, of course, but obviously the draw of the panel and the amazing guidance through the leadership of UNV Saro. So you've already exceeded one level of expectation here. So let me dive right in and say for us in Kenya that we've certainly had a lot of experience working with volunteerism and volunteering. We are proud to be in the top 5 countries globally hosting UN volunteers, and Lucy had shared those statistics with us. And that's not just about numbers, it's a conviction about the value that volunteers bring to the development work that we do in Kenya and elsewhere. So just last year, and with the onset of COVID-19, and as part of our joint program on devolution, which we're implementing together with UNICEF and UN Women, and with the needs of COVID in some of the most affected counties, we quickly worked with UNV to mobilize, recruit about 50 UN volunteer health workers in different domains, basically in public health, clinical technicians, lab technicians, nurses, that we very, very quickly deployed together with the most affected counties, 14 of them, to provide additional support as the first responders to address the crisis. And we were proud, very proud actually last year, that our volunteers were awarded the award for volunteering by the Ministry of Social Affairs in Kenya, but also the volunteering organizations, and to have been selected from a very large pool of volunteer candidates. And that's an honor we don't take lightly. So last year, as we were celebrating International Volunteer Day, I did communicate a very clear message on the importance of volunteering, and that we saw how through these 50 first responders, as a case in point, how they were real inspiration in action in the most difficult circumstances. But also prior to coming to Kenya, I happened to serve for 5 years in South Africa. And even there, we had hosted one of the largest UNV programs as well, placing doctors in one of the most remote provinces and really in some of the most difficult circumstances. And so I've seen in my very long track record with UNDP really the power and the influence and the results that our UNVs bring. Now, moving to the topic that we're really looking at here, and that is moving to the future of volunteering and what does that mean for us. As much as we need to look forward, I do also think that we should look back, because there's a lot that I think we can draw on in terms of our experience from working with volunteerism. Here, historically, and this is before my time in Kenya, there are a lot of lessons that we can draw. I've spoken about the most recent COVID response, but going back a little bit further in time to 2015, together under the leadership of the government and with UNV and the whole volunteer community in Kenya, we did develop and the country adopted a national volunteerism policy. 2 years later, there was research commissioned by the State Department for Social Protection to try and look at assessing the impact that this policy and volunteerism have had on the country. And one of the interesting findings of that analysis was that Kenyan volunteers contributed close to 670 million hours to the economy in 2016. And some calculations were made based on average wages and the types of jobs that these volunteers occupied, that this actually translated to about 3.7% of GDP. So as we reflect certainly on the future of volunteering, I think we need to be also conscious of the context in which we are operating. We know how much governments now and societies more broadly are struggling under the weight of COVID-19, the challenges in economic collapse that we see many economies going through. And so as we look to this context, we shouldn't just look at volunteerism as documenting these experiences, but how do we then inculcate that spirit of volunteerism into societies? We've heard from the minister, of course, the link directly between volunteerism and youth employment, and there is a very clear causality, and that's why for us also as UNDP Kenya, we are very, very keen to be working with those volunteers beyond their assignments to see how we can make that experience a longer term one. A lot more that I think we can share on those experiences, but let me really appreciate the UNV office that we're privileged to have in our backyard here in Kenya for the excellent collaboration, and really look forward to learning from this eminent panel in the next hour or so. Back to you, Tapiwa.
Thank you very much, Warid. And look, the statistics, the contribution of volunteering in Kenya, 3.7 to the GDP, and policies, the environment for volunteering that the country is creating, and the support. I mean, this is tremendous by any means, and we hope we can maintain that momentum and recognition in various spheres of development. I very appreciate your words and team. Now, we are changing gear. We are moving forward. Let me invite the first panel member from Zimbabwe, Mr. Murinda. Unfortunately, you are going to be our first, unfortunately. Look, I've been associated with the development of policies, of strategies in Zimbabwe. In 2009 already, we started working on a Zimbabwe Volunteer Center, but the efforts did not go far. But eventually the government warmed up to the need for a volunteer strategy, and Mr. Mrinda was very much in that forefront. Mr. Mrinda, if I may start by asking you that Zimbabwe is on the fringe of adopting a national strategy. Why now? And what are the key highlights of that national volunteerism strategy? And from your experiences and practices in the ministry, what do you think will be the key areas where this volunteer strategy will help to drive development in Zimbabwe as well as in the region? Mr. Mrinda, over to you. May I ask also the panel members when they come in, if it is possible to put their cameras on?
Thank you, Tapiwa. Distinguished guests, participants, it is my pleasure.
Oh, that's better.
It is my pleasure to be part of this important discussion, dialogue around the issue of migration. The Second Republic, that is the current government, has developed a national development strategy covering the period 2021 to 2025. And as part of that strategy, we feel that there is a lot of work that has been going on in the area of volunteerism. And to that extent, that has spurred to develop a national volunteer strategy, which is obviously in line with the National Development Strategy, which aims at achieving Agenda 2030, which is to become an income country by 2030. That is the Agenda 2030 that the government of Zimbabwe wants the country to achieve. And volunteerism, we believe, definitely contributes to the achievement of that strategy. So the Zimbabwe National Strategy 2021 to 2025, which is in the final stages of its development, is the effort, collective of government through the Ministry of Youth, Sport, Arts and Recreation, the UNV, the VSO, the Higher Life Foundation, and partners, having recognized the need to ensure that the various efforts of different partners volunteer work needed to be standardized, to be coordinated, to be inclusive, to be encouraged, to be supported, to be protected, recognized, valued, and empowered to the volunteer sector. And the key from the expected outcomes from our national volunteer strategy, we want to see the establishment of voluntary opportunities in all the voluntary sector of the country. Secondly, we want to see the development of a volunteer knowledge and resource linkage platform, including database of volunteers. Thirdly, we want to see the development of standards or guidelines for volunteerism in Zimbabwe. And four, we want to see an integration of volunteerism in national policy or legislation. And I'm happy also to let the public know that aspects of volunteerism are already finding their work, their way into the national development and legislative frameworks. For example, the youth policy the new youth policy that was recently approved by Cabinet takes volunteerism as an important strategy for youth development. And the the government is also developing a new legislation for youth, Act, which will have youth volunteers feature quite a lot to encourage its promotion. Now, on my reflections, my current lessons and reflections in the East and the Southern Africa region, 4 points. Firstly, involvement of young people is critical because young people tend to be innovative, they have energy, they have the numbers, and they can bring great benefit to to national development in general. And secondly, the promotion and recognition is critical in volunteerism in order to spur economic growth, because the collective labor in volunteerism aids to economic development, and also best practices from each other. So exchange programs are important. In Zimbabwe, for example, we have the minister talked about cultural expressions through volunteerism, Ubuntu. Also other initiatives like the Youth Build Zimbabwe, involvement of youth in national and community development projects. These are critical lessons we can learn other. Other countries have their own different initiatives that we also benefit from. And lastly, the need to strengthen partnerships. More can be achieved if we strengthen partnerships. So our collective effort between the UN family, civic society organizations, young people, government, together we can achieve more. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murinda. I exceptionally allowed you to speak for more than 5 minutes because you came with the minister. But let me say this, that what we are going to do is we are going to have all the presentation by all the panel members. And at the same time, I would encourage questions, comments on the chat box. And also we want to limit ourselves to the 4 to 5 minutes so that we have much more time for discussion. As you know, in our region in Africa, if you talk alone, but if you sing with everybody. So during the plenary, we'll be able to sing volunteerism with everyone. If we talk to ourselves, we talk alone. So if we can limit ourselves, kindly be concise to the point, and then we open this to plenary so that we can also have the rich contribution from other people who are on this platform this morning. Let me move on to Madame Mara Elion from the Republic of Madagascar, who is going to address the issues of the key lessons of volunteers' contribution to the attainment of the sustainable development goals in Madagascar. Maybe colleagues may want to know that when the MDGs ended, then we had the SDGs. And one of the strategies that were mentioned through a UN General Assembly resolution was to recognize, to integrate, and to prioritize volunteering efforts in the implementation of the SDGs. So, Madam, tell us, what are you doing in Madagascar to make this happen? Over to you, Mara.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for giving me Tapiwa. It's an honor for Madagascar to share its experiences and practice volunteering. You must know that for Madagascar, The volunteering promotion is connected to the Ministry of Education and Culture because the volunteering in general and the Tangamar are raised from the culture so far as they embody the ancestral values of Tia Vanana and solidarity. Tangamar means many hands working together to perform an activity for the general benefit. An advantage of the volunteering promotion in Madagascar is that it is combined with the community animation, the proximity communication that makes aware people who don't have access to TV, radio, nor social media. That is to say that volunteering promotion in Madagascar affects at the same time the urban and rural societies and encompasses all sectors: education, environment, women and children, gender, health and hygiene, public infrastructure, private sector, and administration. Furthermore, it is based within the Ministry of Communication that offers at the same time a mass communication and proximity communication. The volunteering promotion has emerged from a political will initiated by Madam the Minister of Communication and Culture, La Latina Angiet Tungarivu. The volunteering has therefore taken a particular dimension nationally. According to my experience and practices with the Ministry of Communication and Culture, volunteering is a development generator for Madagascar, considering that there is a strong involvement of the Malagasy government and leaders in the volunteering. The Province Tangamar is registered in the law 2021-19 related to the national cultural politics. There is a legal framework regulating the volunteering, such as the law 2015 and 15, whose application decree is ongoing. There is a commitment of many stakeholders in the volunteering, introduction by the Minister of Communication and Culture, but participation of all citizens each third Saturday of the month in different regions. The Tangamar initiative wakes up the sense of responsibility among adults and raises the patriotism among young people who find out passion and the commitment for a lifetime project. Allows out civic and citizen education campaign and mass education campaign. Reduce juvenile delinquency, fruit formation, practical experiences, lessons learned on action, and new skills. Protects endemic species through reforestation and fights against bushfires. Inspires the Malagasy diaspora to turn back into its origin through volunteering. Preserves the public infrastructures at a cheaper cost. There is awareness about cleanliness and hygiene. Fights against corruption. Inspires Malagasy citizens to give time and expertise to leave footprints for the future generations. Through the volunteering and the Tangamar initiative, everyone brings the support he can, regardless his situation. No one is left behind and all kinds of help are welcome. Only during the first 12 months, the initiative Tangamar has helped maintain and renovate 2,600 public infrastructure in 119 districts of Madagascar for more than 3 billion ADR or 800,000 USD savings. Accordingly, volunteering is a development generator for Africa and that we can adapt to the condition of each country. We can connect with all countries to share the benefit of volunteering of each country. To conclude, with volunteering, everything is possible if we put on commitment, passion, government involvement, and a framework regulating the volunteering. Thank you for your attention. Over to you, Tapiwa.
Thank you very much, Madam Mara. And just to add that only last year or so, the government of Madagascar adopted a decree on volunteering. And this is a good way to go in terms of volunteer environment, etc. Thank you very much for your thoughts. And those in the box, please continue to send questions, direct them to specific panel members. And information coming to hand is that today is Mara's birthday. It's a birthday anniversary, so we have a way to sing for you later before we finish. But let me invite my friend, Dr. Richard Manap, the author of a very interesting book on innovative volunteering. Richard, with your so many experience in this sector, where, for example, without volunteerism, certain environmental issues would not have taken place. In Kenya itself, with the Nobel Prize winner, she stood against certain practices. Greenpeace has worked tirelessly on a voluntary basis. Now, Richard, based on your experience and practice at the United Nations Environment Program, UNEP, how do you see volunteering evolve to emerging challenges, especially with your experience in East and Southern Africa, particularly in response to climate change impacts? And if I may also add that, how can volunteering adopt and innovate, since this was at the center of your research and eventually your book? How can this innovation be integrated into global and regional social, technological trends and changes to volunteering? Thank you, Richard. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Tapiwa, and to all colleagues who have already spoken, and especially with the trend set by the Honorable Minister. I love to use African proverbs because we have them in abundance. And the African proverb that we use to start to answer the question you've asked is one that says, where you will sit when you are old shows where you stood in your youth. And I will start answering this from the lessons before I go to the challenges that you've mentioned. And the lesson that we actually see from the work that we do in UNEP across the continent is that the challenge of climate change, especially within the developmental scope, cannot be addressed by government alone. It needs a whole of society approach. So let's face it, just about a week ago, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change released the 2021 IPCC report, which unequivocally pointed to the fact that we are contributing to climate change and that we have only 20 years to be able to surpass the 1.5 degrees, which, as we speak today, we are at 1.1 as the global community, 1.1 degrees. And Africa is warming faster than the entire globe. Research after research has shown that, and research in 30 countries, 60% of those countries show that they were warming faster than the entire world. What is the point? The point is climate change is already with us today. If you look back just in 2019, Cyclone Idai and Cyclone Kenneth that affected many countries in Southern African region. When you come to the Horn of Africa, droughts that plunged millions of people, almost about 15 million people were in need of humanitarian assistance, resulting to food prices up to about 300%. What is the point? We then need everyone on board, and that's where volunteer climate change space has been the aspect of a narrative. The narrative with volunteerism most of the time is seen as if it is a benevolence endeavor. It is a social endeavor. It is not a narrative of engaging everyone to be able to turn their skills into value that can fetch them money, to be able to turn challenges into business opportunities that can help them create impact in community as they put more money in more pockets. And that has been the issue. And then on your question on how volunteering can be adopted and innovated to address the changing global challenges, I think one of the aspects that needs to be looked at very critically is that if you look at the entire world and more so the African continent, the issue is not only policy. People have jokingly sometimes even say that Africa is a continent, it's a cemetery for policies. Whether you're talking climate change, over 52 African countries have ratified the Paris Climate Change Agreement. Whether you're talking climate smart agriculture, nearly every country has a climate smart agriculture policy. Whether you're talking energy, fit-in tariffs, and the list goes on. Whether you're even talking climate legislation, Kenya, where we're speaking from today, actually in 2016, actually put in place a climate change bill law. The idea then is, how do we start to incentivize and engage everyone so that it can start to tap into that climate provisions or into those laws? And the point has been that we are missing the biggest constituents. We're missing young people who constitute 60% of the entire population of the continent. We're missing the informal sector that actually create over 80% of the jobs in the continent. And at the same time, we think that we can then be able to implement climate action without engaging them. So the things to do, the first thing to do is, first of all, we need incentives. We need incentives to then be able to engage the young people to be part and parcel of this transformational development, especially within the climate space. Let me just give an example. In 2016, Kenya actually scrapped the 16% VAT tax on liquid petroleum gas. In 2016, there were only about 9 LPG plants. Today, as we speak, there are 105 LPG plants. Why? As a result of policy, where ordinary citizens then took the advantage of an enabling environment to create their own enterprising organizations. It is the same thing that needs to be done, especially for climate action solutions like simple briquettes, like biogas, whereby if taxes are scrapped, if 16% that is currently there is taken away, it will incentivize young people to start volunteering their time to create their businesses. The last aspect is actually stimulus packages where policy will play a role. We saw what happened with COVID-19, where stimulus packages were actually availed. We need such for climate action, but these stimulus packages should be availed to be used by institutions that everyone is familiar with, like cooperatives, where young people can then be able to get access to finance in the informal sector. If we're able to do this, then we will be able to bring not only the whole of society to drive climate action, but ensures that economic is built.
Thank you, Richard. Excellent. The thing is about this topic so exciting and interesting, to the extent that we'll need probably 2 days and give each panel member not 5 minutes, but 5 hours to discuss, a day to discuss. You have actually touched on many areas and already questions are coming. I don't want to answer them. I don't want to dilute them, but look at some of the questions that are on the chat board right now and prepare to respond to them. Without much ado, let me call upon Melanie, who is head of exploration in the Accelerator Lab in UNDP, Mauritius, and Seychelles. I hope colleagues understand that the Accelerator Lab notion was a deliberate policy initiative by UNDP to allow innovation and to allow research and bring in new ways of working. And already some countries are benefiting, they are profiting from the accelerator labs that they've set up. Melanie, over to you.
Thank you very much, Tapiwa. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. So that's important, that what you mentioned. The Accelerator Lab was created firstly in launch in 2019 to to achieve the SDGs together. Okay, so the presentation. Okay. This discussion today is very important because we have all certainly observed the numerous volunteering and solidarity outbursts that has that have emerged during the actual pandemic crisis. Today, as we discuss the future of volunteerism, I would like to share that volunteering actions in the form of UN volunteers has always been encouraged across both Mauritius and Seychelles by the UNDP country office and by our numerous stakeholders. Can I have the next slide, please? Over the past years, we have welcomed numerous volunteers who have not only contributed to meet the goals of the organization's development program, but also to leverage the power of people and volunteering actions. Today, we have 5 UNDs across UNDP and UN agencies, and we are aiming for even more through our UNDP Mauritius and Seychelles Accelerator Lab. Next slide, please. The UNDP Mauritius and Seychelles Accelerator Lab is part of a global network, as Tapiwa, you were saying. We are currently 91 labs covering 115 locations across the world. As you can see, we are one of the largest learning networks across the world. Our network and approach rely principally on citizen data to make sense of today's rapidly evolving developmental challenges through learning cycles. As you can see, we have 4 approaches. It's the sense, explore, test, and grow approach. Next slide, please. Thank you. To achieve the SDGs together with local actors, communities, and volunteers, our lab just launched an experiment in the form of a call for 10 UN community volunteers to join our team across 3 islands, namely Mauritius, Rodrigue, and Seychelles. It will be over a period of 6 months. This will be a unique and first-time experiment for the region, and we foresee challenges, of course, but we are foremost a learning network aiming to learn as a collective. Our group of UN community volunteers will join our effort to better understand the local context, collect data and information on the local and grassroots innovators, as well as the innovations. Our aim is to track community SDG progress while understanding how people of the 3 islands are coping, and especially building resilience as they face the socio-economic and environmental challenges. We aim to encourage the UN community volunteers to promote voluntary actions as well while they are with us during the assignment over the 6 months. The Honorable Minister talked about the importance of upskilling and developing skills. My team and I, we are very confident that volunteering can be a unique opportunity for young people to gain additional skills while achieving much more and helping the country to support sustainable development. It will be an opportunity also for them to better understand the operation and program of the UNDP for their career development. We should not underestimate the power of volunteering, especially now as we are facing the pandemic crisis. It is time that we promote development differently and together. This experiment with the volunteers across the island will help us to rapidly map local grassroots solutions and innovations to build an online grassroots innovation database. We aim to capture development data because the SDGs require a small data revolution, as the UNV has rightly mentioned this year. It is an opportunity to leverage innovators and solutions across the seas, the neighboring countries on the African continent, and also across the global UNDP Accelerator Lab network. We have a little less than 9 years to achieve the SDGs, and now is the time to act as a collective and mobilize local volunteering actions so that grassroots innovation and solutions can have the possibility of scaling up across our UNDP development programs. We will closely collaborate with UNDP country office, the UNV team, and the Global Accelerator Lab to communicate on important insights, data, and trends of the volunteering experiment across our region so that we can learn from each other. Over the medium term, we want to come up with a national strategy as well for volunteering across our islands. On a final note, our team in Mauritius and Seychelles are convinced that volunteering has a bright future, but we need to provide the required support and recognize the importance of volunteering across our programs. You can get in touch with us as we are happy to collaborate to keep on accelerating collective impact and learn together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Milan. I think this was very on time and very clear in terms of what the UNDP Accelerator Lab is doing and the number of volunteers and sectors. Let me move on to Dr. Peter Kirira, and just to say that one thing that has been of topical discussion, especially from the Global South, is the lack of evidence and research on the contribution of volunteerism to development effectiveness, to the extent that right now, when we are talking about evidence, when we are trying to put some figures, some statistics on the contribution of, we are still anecdotal, like what Lucy mentioned, and also the effort that Kenya has done, as mentioned by Walid, in terms of 3.7 to the GDP. Dr. Kuria, I know that you have been making a lot of efforts, particularly on youth volunteering. You signed an MOU with UNB, and we have so many things that you intend to do. And from a research perspective and experience at Mount Kenya University, what are the key challenges and lessons on volunteering that you think can contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, in Kenya? Also, if you may look at the youth element, give me 5 minutes of that. Then when we open the forum for discussion, then you have another opportunity to delve deeper. Thank you, Dr. Peter Kuria.
Okay, thank you, Tapiwa. Thank you, my colleagues, for such insightful presentation. So I'll try to give a response to the question you have asked, because this topic of volunteerism is very important, especially when it comes to our youths who are very keen to be volunteers, so they can be able to upskill their knowledge and as our former speaker has mentioned, even move into social entrepreneurship. But allow me first to bring a perspective of the academia, because I come from the academia, and probably it's necessary to have the voice of how the academia has been unpacking volunteerism. So I'll try to be brief. At Mount Kenya University, we are a multi-campus university, and we have our presence in different towns in Kenya, and also we have a regional presence. We're in Uganda, Kampala, we're in Bujumbura, Burundi, we're in Hargeisa, Somaliland, we're in Kigali, Rwanda, and also we're in Galoe, in Puntland. And this has allowed us to be able to propagate this very important topic to our satellite campuses. And as a university, what you have done is to mainstream volunteerism, or have attempted to mainstream the issue of volunteerism through our structures. For example, the foundation has been a very important avenue, and what you have done is realization that as an academic institution, we need to work with partners who are on the ground, because volunteerism, when you unpack it, involves interaction with the community and also interaction with other institutions that are dealing with the community. And of course, partnership is one of the SDGs, SDG goal number 17. And through this, we have been able to have valuable partnership with UNV that I mentioned. We are also working with community-based organization, and one of them is the Partners for Care. And through this community-based organization, we have been able to pursue SDG number 3, that is on health, and also SDG number 6 on safe water. And also we have ensured that the issue of volunteerism is captured in our strategic plan and our performance contracts. And to that end, I know in the audience we have students who are from clubs. We have several clubs that are promoting volunteerism at Mount Kenya University. We have Diplomacy Club, we have Student AIDS Information Research Foundation. We have even our student association, We have volunteer club and other clubs that are actually driving this message within the university. And you find that in addition to that, we also look for all our research team. We ask a question about research. We have also endeavored to ensure that our research work also has opportunities for volunteerism, or even we have gone ahead and even engaged in projects that support volunteerism. I'll give you an example. We have a project with the Kenya Prison Authority, and in this project, which is funded by National Research Fund, we are supporting prisoners who are volunteers, who are teaching other prisoners, because in prison, remember, some of the people who are incarcerated for many years are students. They are not finished school, they are in colleges. So we have prisoners who are volunteers who train other prisoners. And what the university has done is to go there and build their skills by making them better teachers, so that these prisoners who are teaching can have pedagogical skills and being able to train the other prisoners so they can be even able to do examination. And this helps those prisoners to sit for national examination. And when they are leaving prison, they're able to have even certificates. And this, of course, is supported by some of what other things that we are doing, because MKU is a UNAI SDG 10 hub on reducing inequalities. And also you have a UNESCO chair on digital education, interdisciplinary teaching, sustainable development, that is SDG number 4. And this is an effort that has been very good because this is one of something that I can talk about. Probably other countries can try and see whether they can get into this. Talking about the insights in the future, I want to mention that the COVID-19 pandemic has brought to the fore the need to strengthen internal civic engagement initiatives, especially since most foreign-funded volunteer institutions had to close shop during the pandemic. And the future, therefore, has to be more local-based community volunteers initiatives, which are important for sustainability. For example, we have seen growth of volunteering activities in the country and within the region at MKU, and we believe this can be replicated within Sub-Saharan Africa. And therefore, integration of volunteerism in the curriculum, in our teaching institutions, our learning institution, is an important way that will be a game changer in the future. And this is one of the ways that we can make volunteerism sustainable. Concerning the other issue you mentioned about how some of the emerging trends that I would want to talk about is that volunteerism is becoming more local. I'm happy in the chat I've seen people who are students who are doing volunteerism, and that is also something that we need to encourage, that where we have more local institutions embracing volunteerism and more younger people embracing volunteerism, and this can be institutionalized in our learning institution. And this already has begun in some of our universities. I know in high school we have clubs that support volunteerism, but the way I'm talking about institutionalization is whereby they become part of the curriculum, so that students are able to get credit out of doing volunteerism work. And this can be done through policy and also can be done through sensitization, such as what we are doing right now. Obviously, some of the lessons you have learned, I know my time is running out, is that we need to be more flexible and we need to build resilience so that we are able to be alive to the ever-changing dynamics. And therefore, this is a call for volunteers to be more flexible, and small is much. I want to finish by saying that it is important when we engage students in volunteer activities, for example, through our projects, and because students are able to change their perception and they appreciate and empathize, especially when we go to communities who are less privileged. And through these small actions, we're able to bring impact. And the story of the hummingbird story of the late Nobel laureate, Professor Wangari Maathai comes to mind. But through those small actions, we're able to change the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daktari. Indeed, it was good to end with the story of the Nobel Prize. It sums up the power of one. The power of one is in doing something, if not anything. She did something, and it is that has brought us where we are today. Let me move on to the last panel member, Doreen. But before that, may I plead and seek your indulgence for a few more minutes so that we can have Doreen, and then we can have a discussion. For the discussion, please keep all the chatbot busy. If we don't have more time on discussion, we can get all your points, your reflections, your inputs on the chatbot, and then reflect this in the report. So, Doreen, my professor at the university said, if you are not in the media, you don't exist. You are a communicator, and volunteerism, like any other philosophy, has benefited from advocacy. And in fact, communication is the medium through which volunteerism breathes. Tell us, Doreen, based on your experience and practice at one campaign, how is volunteering evolving in the East and Southern Africa context, particularly to emerging development issues? If you can discuss this in about 4 minutes, I'll be very happy. Then we'll allow more time for discussion. Thanks, Doreen.
Thank you very much, Tapiwa. And let me start by thanking you all for inviting one to be part of this important dialogue. So I'm happy to share our experience as an organization that is anchored in its volunteers. So for those who don't know please allow me to briefly introduce the organization. So we are an advocacy and campaign movement to end extreme poverty and preventable disease so that everyone can lead a dignified life and have opportunities. We pressure our government to empower citizens to hold their government accountable. We were founded by activists like Bono, who's a singer from U2. And we believe that the fight against poverty isn't about charity, but about justice. We also believe in the power of the citizen voice to demand positive transformation. And this is done with volunteers, and the volunteers that we call our supporters and champions. They are from all walks of life and from the all the political spectrum. They are artists, faith and business leaders, students. And what they do is that they take action in and out, organize, mobilize, educate, but most importantly, they advocate so that people can have an opportunity not only to survive, but also thrive. So out of those supporters, I've just mentioned that we have people that are called champions, and these are exceptional youth activists embedded in their communities to effective change. So what we have seen from people who want to get involved in the work that we do, we currently have about 120 champions out of the thousands that have applied to be part of our organization. In East Africa, we have about 30 of them. We have 12 from Ethiopia and about 18 from Kenya. But in Africa, we also have about 60 champions in Nigeria and 30 in Francophone Africa. So these are the really very dedicated young people who want to contribute to the future of our continent and are taking action on the forefront. But out of those, we have thousands who are supporting the work that we do. And the lessons that we have seen with engaging these people is that the young people or volunteers appreciate when they are inclusive, And they are also asked to co-create campaigns and solve challenges. And that's what we've been doing with them. We also give them an opportunity to be part of a platform that is agile and can adapt to the different circumstances. Like, for example, now with this pandemic, we were able to come up with enhanced communication and learning tools that they can use in their day-to-day activities. But what we usually use as a tool to advance our advocacy work is that we have what we call the 5 Ps. And the first P is policy. So it's very important that volunteers understand the policies that they want to push. So we brief them, we guide them on those policies. And the second P is the politics. It's very important that they have access to policymakers and they have a seat at the table. And the third one is on the public pressure. We pressure government, as I mentioned earlier, to advocate, to do what they have agreed to do, and citizens are empowered to do that. And then the fourth P that we use is the public pressure. It's also very important that government feel that they are under pressure from their citizens to make certain decisions. And then, of course, the last P is partnerships. We can't pretend to do everything on our own, so it's very important that we get other organizations to work with us. And we have seen that volunteers also value connectors and networking that enhance their work. They want to be a part of a social learning and collaboration. And just to give an example to illustrate what I've just mentioned. So recently, the Global Partnership for Education, which is the largest global fund solely dedicated to transform education in lower income countries, organized their replenishment. It was an event that was hosted by the Prime Minister of Britain and President Uhuru Kenyatta of Kenya. And they were looking at getting money for education. With this pandemic, it's easy for people to put education on the side and forgetting that education is really the key to unlock the potential of young people on this continent. So through our volunteers, we were able to pressure government and put education at the center of their discussion, even in this pandemic time. So they were putting pressure in and out, meeting with policymakers, advocating for it, being in the media, talking about the importance of education. And we can see that it yields some wonderful results as this organization was able to get $4 billion for education on the continent. And many of our African leaders were able to come and talk about their commitment to prioritize education. And all of that was able by these volunteers who put pressure on them. And this is the power of volunteerism that we have seen. We have also worked on this pandemic. So at the onset of this pandemic, we launched what we call the One World campaign, which is a campaign that is meant to call the world for global solidarity and collective action against this pandemic from leaders across the world. And we have seen how different people, different organizations have come and called leaders to give a global response to this pandemic. So also this is the power of mobilizing people and advocating for issues. So nothing is going to be given easily. So most people have to fight. And I really see a trend where volunteers want to be more engaged. They want to be part of organizations that are doing a lot to achieve the SDGs. And this is what the experience we've seen at One. And yes, and it's a positive trend that I'm seeing. And this is what I wanted to share. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Doreen. Here we are, colleagues. More than 1.5 hours of intense discussion, intense information. around volunteering. Experiences from different organizations, governments, civil society partners, UN, on what they are doing and what can be done. I've allowed for time, maybe 15 minutes max, to have some bit of discussion, which is an important flavor for end discussion. And then have 1-2 minute pitch by all the panel members. Then after that, we move on to closing, and then we call it a day. There are questions that have come through, and some of them have already been responded to by my colleagues. But I'm going to give floor to those who have asked for it. So far, I have 3. I know that everybody might want to speak, but please, I seek your indulgence that we only take these 3, and then we try to address the questions, and then we move on to the final 1.5 minute speech by the panel members. And also, if Warid would like to say something, it is always a pleasure and honor to have a senior colleague being with us throughout the session like this. I really appreciate, sir. Then we call it a day. May I ask in this order, Dr. Meshesha, Emmanuel, and Peter Omondi, to unmute yourself in that order. And please don't give an address, just your question as clear as possible. Then we move on and we move on. And then you may get a response immediately, or we may choose to have the response on the chat, because my colleagues are busy responding to some of the questions. And also, I know some have asked for certain documents, and my colleagues are busy equally providing links to those documents that you have asked to. One of the documents, of course, is the request for the Zimbabwe strategy from Mr. Mrinda. I know that this document is still not public, unless he wants to say it himself, since it's not yet adopted by cabinet. So that question probably can also be responded to. Right, Dr. Meshesha, if you can take the floor for 2 seconds. Over to you, Dr. Meshesha. Dr. Meshesha, as he organized himself, can I ask Emmanuel? If Emmanuel and Dr. Meshesha organize themselves, can I move on to Peter Omondi?
Okay. Thank you, Tapiwa, and everyone for organizing this wonderful event. My question is, I see a lot of policies, lots of papers. I've just seen one shared in relation to Kenya volunteering. But my question is, what is the government and the responsible parties doing to ensure that these numerous policies are realized? And the last one is, what is the UN and other agencies doing to incorporate volunteering into the educational system, especially at the university or technical and vocational training? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Peter. I'm told Dr. Meshesha and Emmanuel they need to be unmuted. Kevin and Juliana, Faraja, can you assist the colleagues? Are you able to talk now, Dr. Meshesha?
Dr. Emmanuel can talk.
Emmanuel, please go ahead.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. I'm happy to participate at that Zoom conference.
Can you give us your video?
Yeah. Now I think It's okay now?
Yes, go ahead, but we don't see you. But nonetheless, you can proceed.
Yeah. I say, good morning, everyone. I'm happy to participate at that Zoom conference. And my question is, what impact of COVID make on volunteering? I see that there is a big period in some countries, no work, and I suppose that it is a big impact, negative on volunteering, and how you can do, and how would they preconize, how they plan to do for minimize that pandemic on volunteering. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Emmanuel. There is another Emmanuel who wants to say something quickly. Go ahead, Emmanuel. Okay. It looks like Dr. Meshesha, Emmanuel are having challenges to unmute.
Oh, I'm here.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Okay, cool. So my question was to Mulinda from Zimbabwe, who presented the strategy. So, so we are talking about how volunteers are contributing to GDP, to community development. So my fear is that in the future, this may influence private sector to reduce their staff and start hiring volunteers because they are cost effective, they are not expensive, and they have that experience needed. So I wanted to know how they have addressed this through this strategy, and how other countries are going actually to deal with this in case it happens. And in the future.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Lastly, Dr. Meshesha.
Thank you very much, Tapio. But I will try to be precise. My question is on the making volunteerism relevant. How can volunteering remain relevant for the future in light of the emerging challenge we have, be it COVID, proliferation of conflict, and also humanitarian exigency? This is one. The second one is on integrating volunteerism into the SDGs and the Agenda 2063. I would like to hear from the panelists, where are we in terms of integrating volunteerism into the Agenda 2030 and also the African Union Agenda 2063. Thank you very much, Tapio.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for bringing those.
Tapio, you're muted.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for those very interesting discussions that were brought to the table for discussions. What we are going to do as a way forward is we have recorded this, and we are going to provide some response, because the response are not coming from us. I'm trying to investigate the possibility of leaving this platform alive and kicking for a number of hours after this, so that people can continue, if they have time, to proffer ideas, to even answer some of the questions. Because at the end of the day, there's no monopoly in knowing and knowledge, but this is a platform for sharing experiences and ideas. Let me ask the panel members. I plead with you. Once you see me doing this, I'm pleading. Just in a minute to say one thing, and that is, then I'll call upon maybe Walid, and then in that order, Lucy, and we close. Thank you. I'll start with Mr. Murinda. Just a word or two. Thank you. We can hear.
I'm grateful. Thank you. I'm grateful to partners, the UNV, the VSO, Higher Life Foundation, others who are helping us to develop an all-inclusive strategy that will contribute to the development of the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murinda. Mara, do you have a parting word?
Thank you, Tapiwa. I just want to thank you all for a part of this life-changing and a part of the change of all our countries in East and Southern African countries. And I'd like to say that volunteering is not only for young people, it's for all the people in our country. So as all the volunteers can exchange experiences and skills with young volunteers, so as they become more powerful and generator of development for all countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mara. Dr. Richard Munang.
Yeah, thank you very much. Tapiwa, my parting word is simple. Skills retooling is our own fierce agency of now. Why? Because we must be able to offer value in turning challenges into opportunities. And only you as the individual can voluntarily volunteer yourself to retool your skill. A policy will not do it. A policy creates an enabling environment, but you have to seize the opportunity to leverage that policy to make an impact. Until then, we might be in for a long ride.
Interesting. Thanks, Richard. Melanie.
Thank you. So I would like to thank all the panelists for sharing your views and also the actions being done across the region. It's very important that we need to commit to increasing volunteering actions within our UNDP programs as well for development, because without volunteers, we won't be able to achieve our SDGs by 2030. They will help us to leave no one behind in our actions. So that's for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Melanie. There's that very interesting question about how volunteerism framework could be integrated within Africa and across Africa, assuming that all countries are doing their own. Let me tell you that since 2006, I've been working with the African Union in coming up with a continental framework. And only last year, we worked and finalized the continental standards of volunteering. Which Dr. Mashesha can come in, is at the African Union Commission. And so you can go in my inbox, we can share with you these documents. One, the continental standards on volunteering, and as well as the volunteering framework, especially for youth in Africa. Interesting, but however, this is not a one size fits all, because we are in different contexts, economically, politically, and social. This provides normative standards of volunteering that you can adapt to the context of your countries. But we are happy to share this, and I hope Dr. Meshesha would be happy to share this with us. Dr. Peter Kurira, your final words from academia. Academia has been not been doing very much, and I'm happy to hear that amount of seem to have noticed the need to get into research on this area. Thank you, sir.
Yes, thank you. I think my parting shot would be that one of the things that the pandemic has done is it has pushed a reset button on the way we do things. And one of the things that we have been pushed to is to the issue of adoption of technology. And we can leverage on technology, especially to reach a huge constituency of young people through social media. And we can be able to connect these young people as willing volunteers to areas of need. And we have seen that happening in various social media platforms. And also we are also able to leverage on technology to mobilize resources through crowd financing and other such forums, and also even influencing the mindset of the young people on volunteerism through use of social media influencers. And this is an opportunity that needs to be captured, and the academia has taken up the challenge of doing more research in the area of volunteerism. It is an honor. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kurera. And just to remind colleagues that the person who asked for the question on the integration of volunteer frameworks in Africa, please get in touch with Dr. Meshesha. He has provided his contacts online. Then he said he can actually provide some documentation or some notes on that. Fine. Now, last but not least, Doreen, your parting shot, please.
Okay, so mine is just to thank the UN for highlighting the work of volunteers. I think it's through such initiative that we are able to encourage more people to volunteer in their communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now let me move on to the closing. This has been a marathon, and unfortunately we have to come to a close. Warid, we are in the forest without leadership. We cannot find our way out. Take us out of the woods.
Thanks, Tapiwa. Big challenge there, and in the very limited time available, I think it's presumptuous to say that I would be able to do any more than what has already been said. Colleagues have really given us a very rich agenda. I think what I would say is that from what we've heard, there is no single silver bullet to addressing the future of volunteerism. But many good ideas have been put on the table here that I think one parting shot would not do justice. And I really liked what all of the panelists have done, but I think Doreen has given us the 5 Ps as a kind of a roadmap that for us UN folk, of course, we look at the SDGs and speak about the 5 Ps of the SDGs of people, planet, prosperity, peace, and partnerships. But I would perhaps add a couple of more Ps, 2 more Ps to what Doreen has said. And I really think that the point that Richard summarized at the end in terms of personal commitment, I think that is a necessary requisite in addition to the policies. And we've heard, of course, on how through UNV and the UN that spirit and contribution of volunteerism is making its way both at the SDGs and as a means of implementation. And we've heard from Lucy at the outset how the quadrennial comprehensive policy review has put volunteerism at the center. But also, as you just pointed now, Tapiwa, in the African Union at the continental level, and we're seeing how that's trickling into the various country contexts. And policy alone is no good to create the change, as has been said. And I think that policy needs to be translated into budget allocations through national budgeting processes, but also at institutional levels as well, because there will be a need to translate these policies through concrete financial means to enable the uptake and traction. So the personal commitment would be the 6th P that I would add. And the 7th one, and I picked this from our own regional director in one of our meetings, is to pray. I think the 7th P of praying is, we can do our utmost on the 6 prior Ps, but there is an element of hope and, positivism that must be part of the translation of this agenda into reality. So with that, Tapiwa, let me close off from my side and say that as UNDP, certainly in Kenya, but elsewhere, we remain committed to working with all of the partners here to seeing how we can translate those policies into and bring them into life. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Farid. Thank you, Captain. Thank you so much. We are privileged to have you. Lucy, over to you.
Thank you very much, everyone. And let me thank the Minister again in absentia. I want to thank the panelists for the very insightful remarks that we have heard from them, and also the participants and everyone else who has contributed to the success of this dialogue. I think I won't make remarks for the sake of time, but I will just point out to a few threads that have come out of this discussion. And one of the things that I want to point from the outset, and someone has commented on in the chat box, is that these volunteering cutting across all ages, it's not, peculiar or very, very particular to youth. I had a volunteer in Somalia about 75 years of age. So yes, volunteerism cuts across all ages. It's something that is within you as a human being. It is not dictated by the age. So let me just reiterate that. The second thing that I want to point out is that from the presentations that we have heard, we have seen partnerships, of course, coming across, partnerships between the government, on policy enactment, partnerships with the civil society in implementation, partnership with other relevant stakeholders to ensure that these policies that are being enacted are being implemented to ensure that an enabling environment is being created for volunteerism going forward. The other thing that I want to point out is what we have heard about the benefits of volunteerism, both to self and also in contribution to the social capital. The other point I want to make is, and we have had this quite a bit, that even as we try to get more evidence on the contribution of volunteerism to the national development priorities, we also want to integrate volunteerism to being a very critical cog in the national development priorities and continental priorities in terms of development. Something else that is very related to that is ensuring that volunteerism is also contributing to the recovery of countries, especially right now when countries have really been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, another point that came across and that I would want to just highlight is how innovative volunteerism can then drive and provide opportunities for enterprise, can transform to enterprising opportunities. And that is a challenge even going forward. How can we then have volunteerism contributing to that? Lastly, is to thank everyone and the team in SRO that has been very, very, very hard at work to ensure that this dialogue has succeeded. And we also want to thank the participants for being very, very patient with that, because we ran over time. We had internet to end at 12:30 Nairobi time. But as you can see from your watches, we have, crept on to about 13:06. Thank you very much for your patience. Thank you everyone for gracing us with your presence. Thank you panelists. Thank you Tapiwa for moderating. Asantis Nisana. Bye-bye. Au revoir.